Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of the Daily Wisdom Words podcast. I'm your co-host, Neil Torelli.
And I'm your
And-
guest co-host, Tiana Grosh, or G. Hansen.
Yeah. She has two names. Audience is allowed to pick one. Uh, Today we are joined by a very special guest, one that I've wanted forever, and so thankful to have her on. We have life coach and a major inspiration, especially over social media, to so many women out there and so many recovering addicts and mental health issues of all kinds. She's such an inspiration to everyone. We have life coach Gentry Jones with us. Hi, Gentry. Welcome to our show.
Hi, thank you for having me.
Just to set a little bit of a brief context before we get on with the questions, as I mentioned in the intro, I've wanted you for so long, and so I asked, I had seen you on the On Call Empath podcast because it was done by a friend of mine, Raj Montage, who was also a guest on this podcast a few months ago, and I was like, yeah, I've really want her on the podcast because I think she'd be perfect. What do you suggest? Because I sent out a couple of emails, and he's like, do you know how popular she is? Do you know how many requests she gets for podcasts, interviews, and all sorts of stuff? So he told me, just be patient, sit with it. You'll get her as soon as she sees your email. So, and it did happen. So I'm so thankful. It's an absolute pleasure to have you.
Yeah, no, and I apologize, and I gotta own that I'm not the best at, I'll see something, and if I don't respond right then it's like it never happened. It just runs away.
Guilty
so,
too. Me too. Sometimes.
Yeah.
We all do that.
I do get a little overwhelmed with the DMs and all that stuff. So you did email me, which I always tell people if they're really trying to get a hold of me, email's the best way, because DMs, right. It's too hard, and it's really easy to see it, and then I get other DMs and then I forget about it.
Why don't we start with a little bit of your background and, how and when did, alcohol come into your life? And of course, and if you're comfortable, also, can you share a little bit of your struggles of the depression and anxiety you were going through that period?
So when I through lots of therapy and still going to lots of therapy, I think there was a turning point in 5th grade. I had some conflict with friends. I was having some conflict with boys that I liked, and then my parents separated, and it just was a lot. And you have puberty and change, your body's changing and all these things and emotions and hormones. And that was the first time I started to feel a depression, or feeling like I didn't belong, or feeling like I wasn't good enough. And then as I continued to go through school, 7th grade, so only 2 years later, a friend introduced me to vodka, and it was this freeing moment. And it's I didn't even realize how much I was overthinking until I got a break from the overthinking. And so when that happened, that was a really cool feeling, and I really liked it. And obviously I'm in 7th grade, so well, not obviously, I know sometimes people go straight into the deep end, but I have great parents. I had a great upbringing, that it was I still had that moral compass, that I was okay, I'm not supposed to do that. That's wrong. It was fun, but that's wrong. We're not going to go down that route. But I continued to drink throughout high school, and it was a reward. If I went to school, if I got good grades, if I did all my sporting events, I could sneak around and drink, and I didn't feel as guilty about it. It was a reward. It was fun. It was sneaky. It was a check out from the stress and pressure I put on myself academically and in sports. So alcohol became a part of high school, but when it really made the switch to being where it felt out of control was when I went to college, and I didn't have the family right there to make sure I'm home on time. And I didn't have teachers that knew me since I was a kid to be Gentry's off or Gentry's hungover. I could never go to school hungover. In high school, everybody knew me. And knew me, I had this standard I wanted to sit up to. And then the like sports, having to show up for practices wasn't there anymore. I wasn't playing sports in college. And when there was nothing outside of just respecting myself to not turn into a shit show, I couldn't not do it. Like, I couldn't not do it. It was, I didn't have that respect to show up for myself the way I would show up for teachers and coaches and boyfriends and whatever else. And then alcohol just started to get worse and worse and worse, and more drugs, and these highs and lows and highs and lows.
I know that you've said before that one of the earliest signs for you that you, I guess, were made aware of is that from the very beginning, you seem to enjoy it more than people around you, right? That was like probably the earliest seed planted as you. So what was that like? What is it about it that like really got to you?
I think like the fun of it being something we're not supposed to do, partly like kind of sneaking around. I liked the mental check out of it, but yeah, I definitely felt like I was the one that was always looking for it, or are we going to drink tonight, or do you want me to see if so-and-so could buy, or like I was always kind of the one instigating the game plan on how alcohol was going to be involved. Or I wouldn't go to places if I knew that it wasn't going to be involved. And even in high school, I would start to be like, oh, I don't want to go to their house because they're like really religious and they're not going to let us drink there.
Like one of the first serious moments where that you were in college, I think, and you were like, if you're comfortable talking about this, you got alcohol poisoning, and that too, out of all places, in a men's room. So were there, first of all, if you're comfortable, can you tell us the details about that? And B, I guess the second part of the question was did you see that as a sign, or was it just like, hey, I'm in college, this is what college kids do, and we're just having fun here?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm totally comfortable talking about that. So it was the first semester of college too. So I was only like a month and a half of living on my own, and was drinking in the dorms and got alcohol poisoning. And I got put on probation for the dorms. And I think both situations are true. I think I realized like I'm out of control. The way I can't control my drinking is a problem, but there was a ton of excuses in my head and from the outside saying like I had also taken energy pills. And so people are like, your energy pill, when you mix energy pills and alcohol, like how it affects your brain, and you think you are okay, and then the energy pills wear off, and then your alcohol kicks in, and that's when you get like super sick. So I had like people telling me that. I had people saying like, this is like in college, and it's like now that I'm on my own, like it was just a lesson to like be more careful. It wasn't necessarily like everybody thought I had a problem and that I needed to go to rehab. There was a lot of excuses that it was college. Like that's what happens in college, and we just have to be careful.
But I do know that, was it at 21 you actually put yourself through rehab? And I know that was like the first step of many tries before you got to where you are here. What made you take that step at that time?
I checked myself in at 21 and like 6 months into being 21, and it was just this exhaustion of being obsessed and wanting like a break from alcohol and just life in general, like wanting to just go away to a place and just have a break and a reset. And I think at the time it was a decision I made thinking if I just took 21 days off, either one, I won't crave it ever again. Like, oh, I just got to get it out of my system and that'll be fine. Yeah. Or two, it'll be enough of a break that I can like reset and I'll be fine. Like I didn't want to believe that it was going to be a lifelong battle of addiction. And it's not that it has to be painful forever, that it has to be hard and like that, like white knuckling it, but it's something that's a part of my story. I can become addicted to relationships, which is what I'm going through right now. I can become addicted to sugar. I can become addicted to working out, and I can just get obsessive about things that I have to, it's something I'm going to have to constantly be checking myself on.
Is that one of the largest misconceptions for probably any addict? Because I know you, now that you're in life coaching and help a lot of people, especially women out there, that at that age, we all just feel that it's it's not going to take time, right? We all may be under that illusion that sort of this can be fixed. All I need is that one period of sobriety or one period of whatever we're addicted to or whatever issue, and we'll be fine. Do you find that, like, with people you work with, a huge misconception, especially with people in their early 20s?
I see it in all ages. I think early 20s, they might be more in denial about it, and thinking that a quick fix would get them to stay sober, or manage it. But I've seen that in older people too, that they don't want to fully accept that they can't have alcohol in their life. And that's a hard thing to accept, and to have to rewire your thinking and your fun and your go-tos. And it's a lot for people. It's a lot for all ages.
It is, yeah. I'm sure, absolutely.
Yeah,
you mentioned.
Sorry, Neil, but I just want that resonated with me because I've been there before, where I had to stop drinking, and the thought of just like not drinking again, I was like, really? That's going to be so like boring. My life is going to be so boring. But you realize you don't need that. So yeah. Thank you for mentioning. Yes. And I love also, Gentry, that you mentioned like the addiction in other areas. It's not just like for drugs or alcohol, but with love and relationships and all of that. And I just want to know, what do you think is underlying in that addiction? Is it like the seeking for the numbness, as you mentioned, that like getting out of your thoughts and that sort of thing? Or what makes us, like, as humans, want that numbness?
Oh, that's a good question. I think that's a good question. It might be different for other people. For me, it was an escape. I see a lot of people wanting that escape, that freedom to not think, not do the overthinking. But I also think it's a lack of just confidence in who they are without it. I think people get so comfortable with alcohol and it being the one that gives them energy, then that gets they can talk to people. It's just the dependency on these things that if they don't have it, they're not good enough. And that, like, relationships, if I don't have this relationship, I feel so validated in it. If I don't have it, I can't validate myself. Or working out, if I don't show up to the gym, I'm lazy. I'm like not showing up for myself. Like you beat yourself up and stuff. So you get addicted to these things that you think are validating your self-worth, or making you a better, or like giving you a freedom to be a person you didn't think you could be. But really, it's just like coming back to that center and just loving yourself for where you are, and realize you can be all those things without this substance or the other person or the other addiction.
Yeah.
That takes a lot of like inner self-work and love and just compassion, I think. So very powerful.
When were the earliest signs for you that you started thinking, okay, I'm addicted to alcohol? First, realizing that and admitting it to yourself, more importantly than to anyone else, and to take those first steps of, towards recovery.
I had lots of times that I thought, I need to stop. But it was also there's still this like thing in my mind that wasn't ready to stop. And I thought, I'll stop eventually. Someday I won't have to go through this. Someday I won't have to go through these withdrawals. Someday I'll get through this. But like putting off that someday for like every time that I started to get uncomfortable, I would put off that someday, and it would be like, let's just drink, and then we'll do that again then someday. And I did that through my whole 20s. I mean, literally through my whole 20s. 2016, so I was 28. Was I 28 or 29? But 28, because it was my 10-year reunion. That summer was when it was like started to not be someday, and it was like, if I don't do something now, like my kids are going to get taken away. Like if somebody caught me with what I'm doing, my kids would be taken away easily. I was driving drunk. I was drinking at work. So it was less of like, someday I'll put this aside, and like, you are going to do this now, or you're going to have some serious consequences. So I didn't feel like I had the option to wait anymore. It still took 2 years before I actually quit. And I got pregnant with the twins in 2016 too. So that was part of the 2 years, is that I was pregnant. So it was like, I couldn't drink, and that was, makes it easier.
Was it like, I know in another way you said, is this something that with people you help coach and all that, is this a common symptom where you go through a period of sobriety? Like for you said it was when you had each of your kids, but then you kind of, it's almost like you justify that year off of alcohol, you justify it with, well, now I can reward myself.
You hear it all the time. You like all the time. I've gone 3 months without having it, and I was fine. Like I was like, and it's this false sense of reality that because you can stop, that it wasn't affecting your life. And it's like, you were able to stop, but why were you stopping in the first place? And so it is just like this perception that it's a story. And I'm learning about this, that we tell ourselves a story, and we get to either believe that story, or we get to check ourselves and look for the facts and the reality of the situation. Because I am a great storyteller. Like I can convince myself of all of these stories. And it doesn't take much for that story to get out of control. I mean, we've done it with like when people are messaging us and you see like ... and then it stops. And then you're like, what was that? What were they going to say? Who are they mad at me? Or they were going to.
Right.
So it's like these stories that we tell ourselves. So we want to believe that we can get past this 3 months, like, or we could drink again because we made it 3 months. We're creating these stories in our head instead of looking at like the facts of how alcohol was really affecting us and the reasons why we stopped in the first place.
Can you talk a little more? You mentioned when we first got on that you're going through like being single again, and I know you mentioned you're on again, off again. But can you talk a little bit more about that addiction to like love and relationships? And do you see that in people you work with? And if somebody's relating with that, what advice would you give them?
So I'm trying to question first question. So yes, I'm realizing that there was an addiction to a person and a relationship, and I became more and more toxic in the relationship as time went on, the same way I did with alcohol. I started doing things that I wasn't proud of, like meddling in his life or manipulating him to feel sorry for me. And it just got more and more extreme. So I listened to the book Facing Love Addiction by Pia Melody. And it was really helpful to identify the same similarities I did with alcohol. Once I was in that withdrawal state where when I'm like, okay, I can't keep doing this toxic relationship in the same way I was like, I can't keep drinking alcohol like this. And as soon as the thought of it not being in my life, it was like instant panic. It was instant panic of like, okay, well then tonight's the last night and I'm just going to like binge on it and just go all in to drink tonight. Or I'm going to be like, you know what, I've given in. So now I'm going to like, it's very similar. The withdrawal symptoms are very similar. Probably the craving of some sort of void to be filled is very similar. The way I went about it is different just because it became more toxic. It became more manipulative. It became more, it was just different. But the withdrawal symptoms I've really related to alcohol, where I have to just take it one day at a time. I have to accept reality of things. Because the way I fantasized about alcohol once I tried to withdraw is the same way I fantasize about this relationship. And this person isn't necessarily like a horrible person or whatever. We've both just gotten a really, really toxic cycle. And the only way to break it is to get out and step away. And that's hard, but it's like that same that same feeling of romanticizing alcohol and romanticizing the relationship in the withdrawal process is real. It's like a real thing. And that's something I keep telling my friends. Like, I'm thinking, man, he did all these amazing things for me and we had so much fun. Like, I keep thinking of all the great things that happened and not the reality of like, yeah, but it was getting so messy and complicated and your feelings were hurt about things, or you were hurting his feelings about things, and you have to take a step back. And like alcohol is the same thing, where we have this fantasy like, oh man, but that wedding was so much fun. Like 3 years ago, I didn't get blacked out drunk, and that wedding was so fun. And like everybody drinks, and how am I going to survive without this alcohol that's just a part of everybody's life? And I'm romanticizing what my life could have been like if I just could have not been addicted to it. And that's when you gotta stop telling yourself the story and start telling yourself the facts. And whether you end up going back with someone or not, you have to take a step back and get that self-love, that self-respect, and that self-validation before anything else. And that's a huge, just the withdrawals. So that's what I've said. But basically the withdrawals are very, very similar. But just that very panic mode. And I think the best advice to give somebody on both of those is, and I get sometimes so annoyed when people say this, and I'm going to say it though, is the 1 day at a time. Like 1 day at a time. But it's so true. It's like, when I said, I'm never going to drink again, I'm never going to drink again. And that, like, can I really never drink again? And like, never again? What if there's a wedding, like 3 years from now? What if I'm on a beach and everybody on the earth is dead and there's just a margarita sitting there? Would I not drink it? Like, you create this whole story. So it's like, you know what? Today I'm not going to drink. I'm just not going to do it. And like the relationship stuff, today I'm not going to interact. Today I'm going to let him be. I'm going to let him heal. I'm going to heal. And that doesn't mean 30 days from now we can't talk, but today I'm not ready to talk. It's not at a healthy place that we can talk. So I have to today, I'm not going to do it and not worry about what's going to happen 30 days from now. And that 1 day at a time is really, really powerful for any addiction that you're struggling with.
Makes it a lot more like manageable and okay, I can do this for today, and then next day is another day. So
I know with you, like even you're celebrating like I think 4 years of sobriety, but there was one period you mentioned of relapse or lapse as you call it. I know you don't like the word relapse. So I know that happened during that journey at one point. It happened once. So how did that happen? And I guess the two-part question. B, what do you tell others now in that spot where, things are going good, and then all of a sudden, oh no, one more struggle or two more struggles, or because life is always up and down. It's never one smooth journey, even though we all wish it was, obviously.
Mm-hmm. Well, even the lapse was me telling myself a story. The story was that COVID just happened. I signed divorce papers the same week that COVID got shut down. So I was supposed to have like a girls' night just for them to cheer me up, and then we couldn't because everything shut down. I was going through a breakup because I had a boyfriend while I was going through divorce. And we were going through, so I was struggling through that. And the story I told myself is that I have all these excuses to drink, and people will let me. Like people will let, like they will say, oh, I get it. You were going through a bad time. It makes sense that you would drink. You had a lot of things on your plate. You were stressed. I lost a job too because I was working at a restaurant part-time and COVID happened, so it got shut down. So it's like I had all these things that happened back to back. I didn't even truly crave drinking. I just had the story in my head that I could get away with it if I wanted to. And then I was in a position where there was alcohol around, and I just decided to take it. And it was just a few hours, and it was with the ex-boyfriend because we have been on and off for 3 years. So I was with him, and it was a story I told myself, but I think immediately after the situation, the next morning, was like, okay, do I want to continue? Like, does this mean I have to go back to where I was 4 years ago, or 3 years, 2 years ago at the time? And it's like, I spent 2 years practicing healthier habits, rewiring my brain to not crave alcohol, doing all these things that I don't have to say none of that matters because I changed my habit for one night. Like, I can go back to my good habits. And I think that's what, like, I mean, we do the opposite when we're drinking, right? We go, like, I've been drinking, and I have a good habit, and you feel good, and then you go back to alcohol. So it's like, I was doing that a lot with alcohol, where I'd have good habits for a minute and then come back. So it's like, I can do the same thing. I'm having good habits. I made a bad habit choice, and now but I've already been on the road of good habits. So we can just switch right back to where we were. And that's why I called it a lapse. Is I didn't let it go back to a full on, like, take advantage of, like, now I'm just back to square one, and I have to be losing my job again, and I have to be super bad, and I have to keep on this roller coaster because I had a moment. I can just choose to use what I've learned over the last 2 years and get back on track.
Let's go there on that route of positivity a little bit. You told your story and your struggles. How did the whole, I know that you were an accountant before you moved into life coaching and all that. How did that transition happen? How did that come about? And, I think you started it when you were 90 days sober is when you first started putting the posts out there.
Yeah, when I was 90 days sober is when I started a blog post or blog, and then I would share it to my Instagram, and that's when I outed myself and started just talking more about it. It was very, very vanilla, is what I always say. It was very vanilla. It was very like, I just decided to take a step back from alcohol. And instead of like, I was burning my life to the ground, I was suicidal, I was feeling awful about myself, I was about to lose my job. Like, no, I didn't say any of that. That was not, we weren't ready to talk about that yet. It was just, I feel, I just decided to take a step back and I feel healthier. And the response that I got just made me want to share more. It made me feel less alone. It made me feel like people needed to hear that side so they didn't feel less alone. And it just snowballed. I kept sharing and kept just trying to show up authentically and showing the meltdowns too. It's like, I still have anxiety. I still have depression. But I'm not going to not show up in the world the way I would have if I was still drinking. It's like, I might still have those moments, but I'm not going to go straight to feeling suicidal again.
Right. That's so important, right? And another thing that I know you incorporate, and I love this so much, is a lot of humor and you dancing on tables and just all kinds of things. Where does that come from? I mean, given that your background and all that, was it always you? Did you always look at life like that? Or is that more cultivated to make it easier on yourself as well as, your followers and the people to make it more accessible for them?
No, I feel like I've always been a performer. I love the stage. I love the spotlight. And I used to feel a lot of guilt and shame about that. Like, I'm attention seeking. I'm like, it's like an insecurity that I need this attention, when really there are so many people like that give so much to the world because they like that attention, and not because they're not whole with who they are, just because they're good at it. They're good at getting people's attention and keeping it. And I can use that to spread a message of sobriety, to spread a message of self-work, to spread a message of overcoming obstacles, following your dreams. And the dancing ones, those don't do anything except for just like having fun. Like, we can have fun while we can be depressed, anxious, going through sobriety, going through a breakup, and still dance on a coffee table. Like, we don't have to die.
Your kids, right, all for them, they're aware of the story and everything you've been through. How important is that for, parents to communicate with their kids if, who are in your situation and still on that path to recovery?
My personal philosophy on sharing that with your kids is that we can't, I agree that we we want to protect them, right? I want to protect them. I don't want them to have to be embarrassed by me or be fearful of like what's going to happen because I'm an addict, or don't want to put a burden on them that I was struggling. Like, why were you struggling? Was it because of us or whatever? But I think that for me personally, it's powerful to be open and honest with them. So one, they know that it's in their genes. They know that I struggle. They know that they have family members that have struggled, and that there's a potential for them to struggle. And so they can see what I was like when I was at the end and it was bad, and be aware of identifying triggers or identifying things that might make them realize that it's their relationship with alcohol might be off. And I also think it's powerful just to show the human side. I think that we want to be perfect in the eyes of our children, and then we grow up and they realize you're not perfect, which feels almost like a betrayal sometimes, because it's like, man, all this stuff was going on and I didn't even realize, and you guys weren't telling me. And it's not that you have to tell them everything. You don't have to tell them like there's like, they don't know the details of our divorce and stuff like that, but it's okay for them to see that you're human and that you're struggling. And then I struggled and I made poor decisions, and then I got back up. And like that getting back up is what I want them to see and them to understand.
Tell us a little bit about your services as a life coach and what exactly you offer to others in that practice. And how did that start? How do you go from being an accountant to a life? Because it's like two opposite ends of the spectrum.
I became an accountant because I was pregnant at 21 and needed to have a stable job. So that was a sacrifice I made at the time to do what was best for my son and to be able to have a stable career. And I liked money and I liked math, and it made sense at the time, but I hated sitting all day. And as I got sober, I realized why I was numbing and drinking a lot was because I wasn't living my purpose. I was trapped. I felt I was living a life that wasn't who I wanted to be or who I could be. And when I quit drinking and started saying like, okay, embracing who I am, I had a lot more confidence to chase who I am. And like I said, I like the attention of social media. I like to be able to share that. I don't mind being the spotlight. I don't mind being the voice. And then people are reaching out to me all the time. And I'm just like, I want to be able to give back to this community, because it feels really good to be able to know that somebody was inspired by me, or somebody that I played a role in their life. And that service is another thing, though, that I used to feel like guilty about. Like, I feel so selfish that I am benefiting from serving you. But that's human. Like, that's human connection. That's what we're made to do, is to serve each other. And so as I was leaning more into it, sharing more and getting into this, it was like, I'm going to either wish I did this forever, or I'm going to make a big move and just go for it. And I ordered a life coaching course and got certified, and then just leaped in. So I do some group coaching. I took a break from group coaching the last couple of months, but I'm revamping it, and I'll start that back up. And that's a really good like online little course that you can do just to go over the mental health and just some really good education on it. And then the one-on-one coaching people can, like, there's a link in my bio if they wanted to set up just a consultation, but it's a rebound recovery, because like I'm a certified recovery and life coach, but so it doesn't have to be just recovery. If you're just trying to set some goals, or you're trying to set some boundaries, or you're trying to set, because a lot of it's like that discipline, right? Like just anything you're struggling with discipline with, I can help support you through.
Actually, I usually ask this question last, but I have one more question after this. But before we get there, where can people find you? Share with us the links and all that good stuff.
So you can find me on Instagram at Life with Gentry. And there is a link in there to set up any free consultation or just a one-on-one session if you wanted to do that. Then there is also a link to my email in my social media. So Instagram is like kind of one-stop shop for my information. Email is the best way to get a hold of me if you just had questions. And so that's life with Gentry.
Easy and simple. I love that. Easy to remember. Yeah. So this last one, I know I've heard you mention before that during your college years, right, you were questioning your identity and struggling to sort of find it. And so I want to ask is, do you know today, as we sit here and talk, and as of this date, what is your identity? Who is Gentry Jones today?
Oh, that's it. That is a good question. Because as of today, as of right now, with the situation with the withdrawal stuff that I'm in, that self-worth I'm in questioning with this relationship addiction, I'm not as confident as I was a few years ago. I mean, like at different times, but right now, I don't know exactly. Like I've never been fully single. And so it's a really scary but exciting time to really lean into like, who is Gentry? Who is Gentry without trying to show up for or impress a guy? Who is Gentry as just a mom in the house without somebody else around? Who is Gentry with kind of like a business in limbo? Like, which direction am I going to go? And I think it's always like a evolving identity, like but right now is kind of like a changing point. It's a whole new birth of Gentry that's kind of happening right now. In which direction I'm going to go, I don't know. But Gentry is outgoing, and she's gonna figure it out.
I love that you are open with saying that, because I feel so many times we have to identify ourselves, especially now in this culture. Like there's so many labels and all of that, and just being okay with, rebirthing whoever you're going to be next and whatever identity comes. I think that's a good lesson for anyone, really, that you don't have to know exactly like who you are or what you're doing or what you're aiming for. You just have to be okay with being you sometimes. So thank you for leaving us with that message. Thank you for joining us on Daily Wisdom Words. Thank you, Gentry, for joining us today, and I hope you all enjoyed listening.
Be sure to follow us on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook at all the links listed in the description below. And don't forget to hit like on this video and subscribe to this channel so you never miss an episode. Thanks everyone once again, and we will see you right here next week at 9 a.m. Pacific Standard Time.